Hey everyone, welcome back to TechWorks. Today we are taking a deep, hard look at all of the cameras on this Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. Now I got this one on the launch day, which was well over 4 months back, and I took over 2500 image and video samples with all of its cameras and even selected about 151 of those for its camera review. But before I could post that video, my wife and I planned a trip for Ladakh, and I thought I can't go to the beautiful mountains, take amazing images with this beast and not share them with you guys in its camera review. So I decided to delay this video by a month. That also gave me a chance to install all of the software updates which Samsung has been sending to this phone over the last couple of months and see if that brings any improvements to the camera performance. It's been a really long time since I've used a Samsung flagship smartphone. The last one which I used was the S10 Plus, so after being away from the brand for close to 6 years, I was really excited to try out the cameras on this S25 Ultra. Before we get to the image and video samples, let's check out the camera hardware. S25 Ultra rocks a quad camera system covering most of the popular focal lengths. The main camera gets a 200 megapixel sensor with f1.7 aperture and a 24mm lens. The ultra-wide camera now gets a 50 megapixel sensor with f1.9 aperture and an ultra-wide 120 degree field of view. Then there is a 10 megapixel sensor with f2.4 aperture and a 3x or 67mm telephoto lens. And finally, there is another 50 megapixel sensor with f3.4 aperture and a 5x periscope telephoto lens. It also gets a 12 megapixel camera at front with f2.2 aperture and 26mm lens. This one sounds a bit underwhelming compared to rest of the cameras, but we will see how it performs in real life. Alright, with the specs out of the way, let us now get to the image and video samples. Now I love phones whose cameras are consistent and reliable, because more often than not, I have started carrying my smartphone as my primary and the only camera for taking all of my images whenever I go on a vacation like this one. If you guys saw my camera review of the OnePlus 13, you know that it has a really good set of cameras, but its performance is inconsistent and the colors are not accurate, so I can't even think about carrying it as my main camera. But spoiler alert, I must say I had a great time taking images with the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. The last time I used a Samsung Galaxy smartphone was back in 2019 and it was the S10 Plus, and I remember the colors being a bit more vibrant than the actual scene. But it seems like Samsung has toned down on the aggressive saturation and vibrance since then. And now I can see why the S25 Ultra was everyone's favorite Android smartphone when it came to capturing images last year. The S25 Ultra is here to continue the legacy forward. The main 200 megapixel sensor captures a ton of details in every shot. By default, the phone captures binned 12 megapixel shots, but you can switch to the 200 megapixel mode if you wish to capture more details. We will get to those shots a bit later on. Now, although the center of the frame is in sharp focus in each and every shot, for some reason, the edges of the frame appear to be a bit softer. This is with every shot, and it is more apparently visible when things that you are trying to capture are a bit closer to the camera, like in these shots. It is not very apparently visible in some of the images that we saw earlier, like these ones. But in shots like this one, as soon as you move your eyes towards any of the corners or edges, you see everything appearing a lot softer. Initially, I thought that it was an issue with my particular device, so I went to 2 or 3 Samsung stores and checked out the devices that were on display over there. And I saw a similar thing on them as well, so it's an issue on all of the devices. I did not notice this when I was taking the images, but when I was reviewing the images on a larger display, it caught my eye straight away. I am surprised that this issue hasn't been covered by the vocal tech influencer community, who are usually very eager to unearth even minute faults on some specific brands. As I mentioned in the intro, I have been using this phone right from the launch day, so it has got quite a few updates in the last 5 months, some of which said that they are bringing improvements to the cameras, but this issue of softer edges is still present. Anyways, it is not very distracting, and chances are if you haven't noticed it before I mentioned it, you won't be noticing it in your shots as well. Now let us turn our attention towards the colors. There was a time when Samsung used to go overboard with the colors on their smartphones. They used to process the raw images in such a way that all of the colors used to be very saturated and vibrant, and they used to look very unnatural to average users. But that is a thing of past. Now you can see the colors in these images are looking really good. Everything appears as you would expect it, and the colors that I am seeing in these images are almost the same as I could see the scene with my own eyes. There is still some amount of warmth being added to the shot to give it a bit of a cozy feel, and some people are even considering this as added saturation, which it is clearly not, and I don't think it is taking anything away from the shot. I also had the iPhone 16 Pro with me when I was taking these images, which I consider to be a standard or baseline for how the smartphone should represent colors, and the colors from this S25 Ultra match very closely with the ones from the iPhone 16 Pro. Not just while viewing them on their respective displays, but also while comparing them side by side on the display of my MacBook Pro. So all in all, I'm really happy with how the colors are looking in these shots. The sky is not overly saturated to make it pop, and neither are other colors in the shots like this one. After having used the OnePlus 13 and few other Android smartphones for the past month, which this year seem to have their own take on how the colors in their images should look, I really appreciate how natural and consistent this phone is with its results. There is no weird LUT, look, filter or preset applied on top, and it just lets the scene be as it was instead of changing the colors in processing. HDR shots, where there are two bright and darker areas together in the scene, also look very good. The phone was struggling in this particular shot as it wasn't able to set the focus accurately, but when I checked the shots that it took, I felt that it did really well here. It didn't capture a ton of information in the shadows, but you should know that this was a completely dark room with no other light source inside, and considering that, I think it did really well to keep the image grain free to a large extent and also kept the highlights in check. When I first got this phone, it was trying to lift the shadows a bit too much for every shot, but this was fixed with the first major update which I got after getting the phone, and ever since it has managed the highlights really well. I think these images speak for themselves. It was a very bright sunny day, but the phone did not let any parts of the scene blow out, not even the snow-capped mountains that you can see far in the background. At the same time, you can see a lot of information in the shadowed parts in the foreground of this shot. There is a bit of lens flare around the sun in this shot, but even though the sun was directly in the frame, that part of the sky is not completely blown out. You can still see the blue sky around the sun, and the rest of the shot also holds on to a ton of details. This is one of my favorite shots. It was late afternoon, the sun was about to set behind the mountains, and I was able to mask it with the shops in the foreground on the far left. And all of this created a very nice golden light on the street, and people passing by offered such amazing contrast, showcasing the amazing dynamic range of this S25 Ultra. I hope you guys enjoyed this video so far, and if you did, I will really appreciate if you could hit the like button and maybe share it with someone who is looking to get the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. And please subscribe to the channel for more amazing videos. Alright, now let's get back to the video and check out the high resolution shots. These 200 megapixel shots have incredible amount of detail. A 12 megapixel binned image of the same shot captures 5.5 MB worth of details, whereas a 200 megapixel image captures 61.6 MB worth of information. So the high resolution shot has over 10 times more data as the 12 megapixel one. You will not see these extra bit of details from so far, but as soon as we zoom in even 3 to 4 times, we start noticing the 200 megapixel shot showing much more details in each part of the frame. We can see this more clearly if I zoom in even further. The 200 megapixel sensor on the back of this camera is definitely not the best, or even the biggest one that we have seen on a smartphone. There are Chinese manufacturers like Xiaomi, Oppo and Huawei who have been putting even larger physical sensors with higher individual pixels on the back of their phone. But this 200 megapixel one from Samsung still delivers respectable amount of details in each shot. Now all of this information is good, but you might have a question that when would you need to capture all of this information? Or you might be wondering that if the 200 megapixel shot captures more information than 12 megapixel one, should you just keep shooting at that resolution all the time? Well, the answer to the first part of this question is, you should switch to the 200 megapixel mode when you are capturing some landscape or some architecture, because that is when you would want to preserve as much information in the shot as possible. So if you want to zoom in on any part of the shot later on, that part should have all of the information that you need. Or you can take high resolution shots when you know that you are going to crop in on a certain part of the image later on, and you just don't want to go through the hassle of framing the shot perfectly while you are shooting it. I think these are the two conditions when you should switch to the 200 megapixel mode. And the answer to the second part is no, you should not take all of your images in the high resolution mode, because one, as I said some time back, these images capture over 10 times more information compared to a 12 megapixel shot, so your phone's internal storage will fill up pretty soon if you stick to this mode. And two, the phone needs to use pixel binning in some lower light and indoor situations, so the size of each individual pixel becomes larger, resulting in lower overall noise in the shot. This is the reason I stick to the default 12 megapixel mode on my phone unless I am capturing image of some architecture or landscape. With that, we come to the close-up shots. Like most of the recent flagship smartphones, even this S25 Ultra tries to switch to the macro mode when you get very close to your subject. And while those shots have their merits, for situations like these where I like to click close-up shots for that creamy background separation, I make sure to switch the auto macro mode off, and I suggest you guys do the same. When you get so close to your subject, just look at how amazing the shot looks. The subject closest to the camera, or the one that you tap on, is in perfect sharp focus, and thanks to the big image sensor and wide aperture, the background gets a very creamy optical bokeh. In some of the shots like this one, the phone struggled a bit to set the focus on one of the horses, so I had to tap on them and take 3 to 5 shots before the phone finally nailed the focus. I said I prefer taking close-up shots and not macros with this phone, because these close-up shots are being captured with the main camera, which has much superior lens, wider aperture and a bigger sensor compared to the ultra-wide lens which is used on the S25 Ultra to take macro shots. Now here are examples of some of the macro shots which I took with this phone. These look good, and the ultra-wide angle lens lets you get way closer to the subject for setting focus than the main camera does. But the thing is, unless you add a lot of light to these macro shots, you will end up with a lot of noise in them. So whenever you are taking macro shots, the best place to click them would be outdoors when there is bright sunlight. And if you are taking them indoors, make sure to have a bright light source near your subject. This is true for most of the smartphones and not just the S25 Ultra. They basically use the ultra-wide angle lens for taking macro shots, and these ones have a smaller sensor and a narrower aperture, so these cameras need a lot of light to capture good amount of information. Other than for macro shots, the ultra-wide angle lens works even better when you are using it for its true intended purpose, taking ultra-wide shots. It especially comes in handy in these kind of situations, where I wanted to capture the entire structure but the main camera wasn't able to get it in the frame and I did not have any more space to move back. For this shot, I wanted to capture this huge idol of Buddha, and it's actually a 2-story high idol inside another structure. And again, the main camera could only let me capture what you are seeing here. When I switched to the ultra-wide angle lens, I could get a lot more of the scene in the single shot. This still wasn't enough to show the true size and scale of the idol, but you still get the basic idea thanks to the ultra-wide angle lens. The ultra-wide angle shot looks a bit darker compared to the ones from the main camera, and this is because this one has a smaller image sensor and a narrower aperture in front of it. So overall, this camera captures much less light compared to the main camera. It still did well in this situation, but this is a good point to remind you that while you are using the ultra-wide angle lens, it is best to take your images in either outside sunny conditions like you can see in this next set of images, or in very well lit indoor lighting conditions. Again, you can see this structure in the image from the main camera and it looks really good, but it doesn't give you the whole perspective of the scene. When I switch to the ultra-wide angle lens, you can see that it is actually a tower-like structure surrounded by the mountains and just has a very narrow bridge connecting to it. Now there is a bit of shift in colors when you are switching between the ultra-wide and the normal lens, but it is not very easily apparent in these bright colorful shots. The ones from the main camera are much warmer, whereas same shot from the ultra-wide angle lens has a lot cooler color tone. Even after getting 3 to 4 major software updates, this issue is still there. It is not very distracting, but a little bit more consistency in terms of colors from both the lenses would have looked even more pleasing. While we have already moved away from the main camera, let us check the zoom lenses as well before we move back to the portrait shot from the main camera. With two telephoto cameras, zoom is where the S25 Ultra flexes hard. Its 3x and 5x zoomed in shots are razor sharp. Here is a shot of the Thiksey monastery in Leh from the main camera, and this one is from the 3x telephoto lens. It allows you to get rid of some of the distractions and get a bit closer to the thing that you are actually trying to capture. And this is a 5x telephoto shot from the second telephoto lens. It lets you get even closer, all while maintaining razor sharp details. If you would just capture an image from the main camera and zoom in digitally, the details would be muddy. But these optically zoomed in shots capture much more information and lets the shot look amazing. Here's another shot from the main camera, and as you can see, there are many distractions in this one. And this is a 3x one from the telephoto lens. Most of the distractions are now gone and the image looks much cleaner with all of the focus on what I wanted to capture. Here is a similar set of image, but this time from the main camera and the 5x telephoto lens. I think last year on the S24 Ultra, Samsung shifted from the 10x periscope lens of the S23 Ultra to the 5x one, and they have carried the same on this year's S25 Ultra. It is good to have two telephoto cameras for more reach, but I think since they already had a good one with the 3x telephoto lens, for the second one, they should have stuck to the 10x telephoto camera, giving users more reach for taking shots like these. Here's a 1x and 5x optical shot and 10x digitally zoomed in shot of the Leh Palace from Leh Market. This one still looks to have enough details thanks to all the AI image processing and upscaling, but I can't help but wonder how amazing this shot would have looked from behind a 50 megapixel sensor and a 10x optical zoom lens combo. Here's another set of images. This one is from the main camera and this is a 10x digitally zoomed in one. Although it's a digitally zoomed in shot, the mountains still look extremely detailed. Normally, I don't use the telephoto lens all that much, but this terrain was so amazing that I couldn't help but take such amazing shots. You don't have to stop at 10x. This is a 30x digitally zoomed in shot of the snow-capped mountain shot during the morning straight out of my hotel room's window, and this is a 60x zoomed in one. While not being as detailed as the optically zoomed in ones, I think these ones still look good. They could have been a bit more detailed if the glass window which I was shooting out of was a bit cleaner. You can continue zooming in even further all the way up to 100x digitally, but to be honest, those images don't look really good. There are basically no details in these shots. For most of my shots, I tried to stick to the 5x telephoto lens and occasionally tried to take 10x digitally zoomed in one, some of which turned out looking really good. This is one of my favorite shots. It was golden hour and the sun was about to set, and the 5x telephoto lens allowed me to take this sun-kissed shot. I don't get to say this very often when reviewing an Android phone, but I had a great time taking portrait shots with this one. The Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra I think is my favorite Android smartphone for taking portrait shots. Just look at these ones. The subjects are perfectly isolated, edge detection seems to be on point, the background is blurred out nicely depending on how aggressive or mellow you want the blur to be. Dynamic range is on point for these type of shots, which is not the easiest thing to achieve for all manufacturers, and most importantly, the colors are also on point as you would expect them to be. No weird filters or look applied on top of these portrait shots, no boosting of the brightness levels around your face, no crushing of the darker parts, all the colors look natural, and even the white balance is accurate for the lighting conditions. I am saying all these things because a lot of Android flagship smartphones that I have been recently using have been found guilty of doing all or most of these things for its portrait shots. I am so happy to say that this S25 Ultra is pretty consistent while taking these images. In very extreme and rare occasions, it failed to set the focus on the face or the subject. To be honest, it only happened twice, and that too when I first got the phone, and it has worked flawlessly every other time. Now most of you guys know that I carry more than one smartphone whenever I am taking image samples. And with this S25 Ultra, I also had the iPhone 16 Pro at the time. So definitely stay subscribed to the channel if you are interested in seeing my camera comparison video between these two phones, as that video is going to blow some minds. Thanks to the telephoto lens on the S25 Ultra, we can take zoomed in portrait shots as well. And here are a few ones which I took from the 5x telephoto lens. Just like any good smartphone, this phone detects the edges even when you are very far away from the subject. Look at this shot. It looks so good that it could easily be mistaken for being clicked with a professional DSLR camera. I have a ton of more zoomed in portrait shots of people just walking around the streets, but I don't have their permission to share those images with you guys, so I'm not going to include them in the video. But all you need to know is, if you like taking portrait shots, you are going to love the S25 Ultra. If I had to change one thing on this camera, then it would be the sharpness level. If the subjects in these zoomed in portrait shots would have been slightly sharper and more detailed, that could have made it almost perfect. I love taking portrait shots of objects as well. A lot of people ask me that why don't I just take normal close-up shots instead? Well, there is an easy explanation. As the name suggests, for close-up shots, you need to be very close to your subject for the image sensor to capture a creamy bokeh in the background. And the close-up shots don't work all that well for bigger objects like this speaker. Those shots only keep a particular part of your subject in focus. With these portrait shots, first I can be as close or far away from the subject as I want, and I can have the complete object in focus and still get blurred effect on the background and the foreground. Plus, I feel these images look slightly better and more professional compared to the normal close-up shots. Well, these are my reasons. Do you guys take portrait shots of objects? If not, try it and you will see how good the shots turn out. With that, we come to the images which are shot in artificial and lower lighting conditions. Now these images look good and have good details at a first glance. But if you look closer, there is a lot of noise being captured in the darker areas. This was a very well lit scene and I wasn't expecting to see so much noise even in the parts where we have plenty of light. This is not even the darkest part of the shot. Now these images don't look bad. In fact, they look really good and I believe most people will be really happy with these kind of results in artificially lit situations. But a phone in this price segment should be doing a better job in these lighting conditions. I believe the 200 megapixel sensor is to be blamed here. The overall size of the sensor is not the largest, and when you cramp in 200 million pixels on that die, the individual size of each pixel goes down so it can't capture a lot of light. Companies have been using pixel binning to counter this issue, but even when combining information from surrounding pixels into one pixel, the result I'm afraid is not on the same level as other flagship smartphones. Now we are going to get into even lower lighting conditions. Here we have a lot of darker and brighter parts in the shot, and I think the phone did really well in this situation. It managed the brightly exposed lights really well and did not let them or areas around them to be overexposed, which made the overall shot look very balanced. Similarly, in this shot there were darker areas and bright light source directly in the frame, but the phone did very well to not let the brighter parts to be overexposed. I'm happy that Samsung is letting the nighttime shots look like they have been captured during the nighttime, instead of adding too much light and making them look like daytime shots, which they used to do in the past, and some of the competing phones are still doing this till date. That doesn't look very natural, at least to me. I left the phone at its default settings while taking these low light shots, so the phone decides when it needs to fire up the night mode depending on the available light. It used the night mode for this and all of the following shots. Again, even with the night mode, it keeps the image looking natural instead of making them too bright. You can still see some amount of noise in the entire shot, which is to be expected in these lighting conditions. Now initially, I thought for this shot, the main camera is trying to make the sky appear too bright even during the night time. But then I noticed a small light source behind this canopy, and the light that we are seeing scattered in the sky is from that source. So the phone is not trying to make the night sky appear as day. This is how the actual scene was. These images look good, But I still feel everything in the shot seems a lot less detailed or softer than expected. We saw the phone capturing a lot more details during the daytime, and for some reason most, or I should say all of the low light shots are very soft overall. You could make out everything and see what is what, but it definitely seems that these images are not as sharp. For example, here is the same shot from the iPhone 16 Pro for comparison, and in this shot, everything feels a lot more sharper and well defined. For some reason, this sharpness seems to be missing from the S25 Ultra's low light shots. I won't be showing any more shots on the iPhone 16 Pro here. To check out a lot more shots and a detailed camera comparison between these two, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and have the notifications turned on. The new 50 megapixel ultra-wide camera takes good looking shots in lower light. Since it doesn't have OIS and as wide aperture as the main camera, it switches to the night mode even when the main camera doesn't. But then that results in images which look really good and detailed. I mean as detailed as ones from the ultra-wide sensor can look. Yes, these ones are not as good or bright or even detailed as ones from the main camera, since the physical size of this image sensor itself is smaller than the main camera. But I think these ones still look a bit better than the ultra-wide night mode shots on the iPhone 16 Pro. There is noticeably more noise in these night mode wide shots, but again, that is to be expected from any smartphone's camera. Here is how an indoor shot from the ultra-wide angle lens looks like. Please note that this camera doesn't capture the best looking shot, so if you are in situations like these and you have people in your shot, please take your images with the main camera. It will deliver much better looking images. That brings us to the front facing camera. It's a 12 megapixel sensor which is clicking these shots. It is not the most detailed selfie camera out there, and sometimes like in this shot, phone's processing adds a bit of weird grainy effect to the texture to some of the elements like my t-shirt over here. It was a plain t-shirt, but the phone seems to have felt like there was some texture on it. And I took these selfies in very well lit environment, so it's not that it is doing this due to lack of light or anything like that. Now the selfies don't look bad or you won't find it messing the texture on all of the elements, but I feel like these selfies don't have as many details as you would expect from a phone in this price range. I feel like the selfie camera is the weakest camera on this entire phone. You guys have a look at these selfies and let me know in the comments what do you think about them. The colors and white balance, like with all of the shots on the rear camera, are still on point even with the front facing camera. It is reproducing the skin tones as they are, and it's not going too overboard with the saturation as well. The dynamic range also does a good job and doesn't let too many areas of the scene be overexposed. It's just that the details seem to be missing. The portrait selfies seem to be slightly more detailed, but I think it looks that way because everything else around the face is blurred out. But otherwise, they have the same amount of details as normal selfies. The edge detection is good, but it can certainly use some refinement via software updates, so it can detect some random strands of hair more accurately. As I said, this selfie camera is the weakest one on this phone, so if you are looking for a high-end phone, especially for the purpose of using its front-facing camera a lot, I think you should look at some of the other competing phones in the market. Here's a video from the front-facing camera of the S25 Ultra. It is really bright outside, so you can see how this phone handles the overall colors of the scene, exposure and stabilization when I'm walking around with it. The audio that you are hearing right now is also being captured internally, so you guys let me know in the comments how do you think this phone is handling vlogging like situations. Video creators, this part is for you. This S25 Ultra can shoot 8K videos at 30 fps and 4K videos at up to 120 fps with log recording option for pro level color grading. I had a great time shooting 8K videos with this phone. I think because it was in a very cold environment, the phone did not heat up even after shooting 8K videos for 5 to 7 minutes, and I could barely see the phone's performance dropping other than it dropped a few frames here and there every once in a while. And even with a few dropped frames, I feel like this is the smoothest 8K video shooting experience I have had on a smartphone till date. All of the other phones which I have tried shooting 8K videos with in the past either got very hot very soon or the videos were too choppy. But the S25 Ultra handles the 8K videos like a champ. Now I could have shot all my videos in 8K and would have suggested you to do the same, but the fact is, I know that majority of the people watching this video or even planning to get this phone might not have an 8K display to view these videos on. On top of that, these ones take up more storage compared to the standard 4K video, so I found that it is best to stick to shooting 4K videos with all of the cameras. While shooting 4K 60 fps videos with the rear camera, this phone lets you switch between all of them. So you can start your 4K 60 fps video recording with the ultra wide angle lens, then zoom in or switch to the main 1x camera, or even switch to the 3x or 5x telephoto lens. There are still a few Android smartphones which don't let you do this, so I thought it's a feature worth mentioning. You can keep on zooming in further digitally, and the videos at 10x and even at 20x look surprisingly usable, especially if you are shooting them in well-lit outdoor lighting conditions. There is obviously a lot of noise and less details at this focal length, but it is cool that you can get somewhat usable videos even when zooming in so far digitally. For zoomed in videos, I enjoyed using the 5x telephoto lens. You can get amazing looking videos like this even after the sun has set and the light is not the most ideal. This is another 4K 60fps video, and you can either play them as they are or slow them down to 30 or even 24fps timeline and add such a dreamy and cinematic feel to the entire video. In low light, the main camera continues capturing good looking video. Colors are maintained and look as you could see them with your own eyes, and the dynamic range is also excellent where it doesn't let too many areas of the video be blown out. Some very bright light sources might still clip and you will also see some green in the darker areas, but the overall look and feel of the video is very balanced. The stabilization is also good even in lower light and you don't see too many jitters even when I am walking around. So if you are looking for a high-end phone especially for shooting videos and you don't want to go with Apple's iPhone, then I feel like the S25 Ultra is your next best option. By this point, I am certain that its videos are only second to an iPhone, at least for now. It's great to see Samsung finally upping their video shooting game. They still need to fix something, or rather smoothen out some of the things like smoother exposure adjustment instead of abrupt changes when there is change in lighting conditions, but other than that, I feel like they have done an amazing job with the video shooting ability of this S25 Ultra. I have shot a lot of videos side by side with this phone and the iPhone 16 Pro, and I'm really excited to see which one has done a better job. I have a feeling that the gap is going to be very minimal, if any, this time around. So we saw over 115 image and video samples from all the cameras on this phone. And after looking at all those image and video samples, do you think the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra is the camera king for 2025? Well, I can't say that for certain because I haven't tried the cameras from Xiaomi, Oppo and Vivo flagship smartphones, but I can definitely say that the competition is really close. The 200 megapixel main sensor, upgraded 50 megapixel ultra-wide angle camera and versatile zoom makes it a powerhouse for photographers. Video is top-notch too, and frankly one of the best that I have seen come out of an Android smartphone. And combining that with AI audio erase and log mode is just like adding more feathers to its crown. AI features like object cleanup, which I feel is the best on any smartphone right now, generative fill stuff which lets you add anything that you could imagine to your photos, which I personally feel works really well but is a gimmick, and other bits and AI features sprinkled here and there just add to the overall experience. That being said, if you are using last year's Ultra or even the S23 Ultra, maybe hold on to it for another year and hope that Samsung will bring some even bigger meaningful upgrades, especially to the cameras, to the next device. This time, Samsung has also removed the Bluetooth compatibility of the S Pen, so you can no longer use it as a remote shutter for taking your images. So if you are coming from an older Galaxy phone, this would be a downgrade for you. Overall, I feel Samsung has done a great job with the S25 Ultra, but I can't help but wonder how good the telephoto range would have been if they would have stuck to the 10x telephoto lens like on the S23 Ultra instead of going the Apple route and cutting the optical telephoto range to 5x. Don't get me wrong, its zoom images are really good, but just imagine having a 50 megapixel sensor behind a 10x periscope lens. Those shots would have been on a whole another level. And I also feel that the 12 megapixel selfie camera is getting a bit dated and it is in a desperate need of an upgrade. So at its current starting price of close to 1,20,000 rupees, it is definitely a premium investment. But for camera nerds, it is worth every penny. Many of you might be wondering, how does this fare against the iPhone 16 Pro? So to answer that, I have a very detailed camera comparison between these two phones coming up in the next few days. So make sure you have all the notifications for this channel turned on. So that is what I feel about all of the cameras on this S25 Ultra. You guys saw the image and video samples too, so what do you think about its cameras and which is your favorite camera feature? Let me know in the comments. That is it for this video guys. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to the channel for a lot more quality tech videos like this. You can also check out some of the other videos from this channel. This has been Sagar and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.